I remember what it was like being in the military. Sometimes people take that for granted, the military service and what that really means. So when you're out, it's like you become just like a regular person, but really you're not a regular person. You're somebody who served your country, and I think a lot of those homes that I ride by, I wonder what some of those soldiers coming from home. Now they have an opportunity when otherwise they wouldn't have had opportunity.
Welcome to Lost Soldiers, a production of Wreaths Across America Radio, brought to you by SaveCedarGrove.org and HistorySouth.org. Here are your hosts, Sheikh Malik Abdullah and Dr. Tom Hanchett.
And welcome. We're back with another intriguing episode of Lost Soldiers, looking at the life and times of our veterans buried in Cedar Grove Cemetery here in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the historic Beatties Ford community, Charlotte's West End. Here with me, as always, Charlotte's most accessible historian, Dr. Tom Hanchett. Dr. Tom Hanchett runs HistorySouth.org, where you can find great information on Charlotte, information on how you can be a history buff as well, and learn more about your community and share those stories out. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, Tom. It's good to be here. We're at Imaginon, Public Library's children's and teens library in Cedar, and they have a podcast space, so we're grateful to that. We're grateful to the Carolina Room, the history organization here at the Public Library, and John O'Connor, and we're real grateful to be affiliated with Veterans Bridge Home and with Wreaths Across America as we do these podcasts. The podcasts look at the Cedar Grove Cemetery out on the historic West End, and it provides a window for all sorts of explorations of Black life in the 20th century. Those 21, we found another one. Veterans are kind of a window on what different experiences folks had. And so Sheikh Abdullah and I enjoy inviting folks who have their own perspectives to come with us. And today we've got James B. Lee, who is not from the Beatties Ford corridor. He's from the Grier part of Charlotte, which is in the other direction. But his experiences as a veteran will be the center of what we talk about today. James Lee, glad to have you here.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Shay. It's always good to be around you guys. I first ran into Tom's work when I was doing some research when I got out of the military, and I'm just happy to be here with you guys and interested to see what this conversation is going to be about.
Well, thanks for joining us, James. I'm really excited to have you on the show. We know a lot about the incredible work you do in the Grier Heights community, and beyond that with Greater Charlotte, looking for opportunities to build community, share out our stories, and also build change. We know that you're a veteran in addition to a community leader, and we'd love to hear more about you and start to talk about your service, your memories of veteran service, and how it's affected you as a Black soldier here in Charlotte and the United States.
So maybe start with talking about folks you grew up around who were veterans.
Probably the first veteran that crossed me was my dad. My dad died when I was 9 years old, and I think he served in South Korea, in the Korean War. And I actually went in the military once I graduated. Actually, I knew that direction where I was going to go from middle school because, I wasn't an athlete or I wasn't overly smart. And I was introduced to junior ROTC, and that began my journey to once I graduated, I went in the military right out of high school and became a carpenter and traveled to some countries and some states, and I had a good time. It was a good beginning for me as a young man, being 18 and not knowing the direction. So the military gave me a good direction. Yeah.
So I've done a tad bit of research. Tom's here to be the heavyweight on that, but I did find out that Grier Heights, the community that you're so committed to and where you come up in Charlotte, has a military history that's pretty significant. The dates escape me at the moment, but at one point Grier Heights was expanded to house Black soldiers returning from World War II, which I thought was a really great anecdote as to what was happening with the times, how a military life changed domestic life here for quite a few African Americans, black soldiers returning with a little bit of money. So I think it was a great decision, or obviously a smart businessman like Grier said, how can we get some of that money and build community at the same time, and made the decision to make housing for these guys coming back. So really fantastic thing. And I wanted to find out, James, you didn't mention where you went to school. I think that's an important part of the story, and where you did this junior ROTC, et cetera.
I went to Randolph Junior High School, and then went to East Mecklenburg. At that time, busing had started when I was like in third grade. So I was at the predominantly black school, Billingsville School, for first, second, third grade, and then busing came in. Then I just began to be bussed around, and then I ended up and graduated from East Mecklenburg, which was a great school because we had a principal, Leroy Pop Miller, who came from the West Charlotte as a teacher. He came to be a principal over there at that challenge East Mecklenburg, when you have like affluent families, children going to school with non-affluent children like myself, who were coming from quote unquote the hood. So it was a good experience being around different folks who became friends, who had different backgrounds and all that stuff, even different futures ahead of themselves. So that was a great school, and had a good mix of folks that became, now looking back, great leaders.
So let's talk more about the veterans who were around you as you were growing up. The streets that Arthur Grier laid out, we'll talk more about this later on. Fanny Circle and Jean Avenue, just off of Monroe Road, if you know Charlotte. Beautiful little ranch houses from the late 1940s, early 1950s. But there were all sorts of different kinds of veterans. Do you remember other folks?
I think because of when I was born in 61 and graduated in 79, and I didn't run into too much military stuff, but I just know of some military stuff, some folks that were serving in the military and in different wars and stuff, that I got cemetery records that show that they were in wars and they died, that kind of things. But I don't have that much. I can't remember anything that was like a military kind of thing experience. But I do know that Arthur Grier was able to be one of those men who worked with the system, quote unquote, to get folks housing, because at that time it wasn't a lot of black builders who had that opportunity. So Arthur, he was allowed that opportunity to serve his community and I think it showed that in my research and what I've learned from you, Tom, is that this was one of the first nationwide communities that were built by black folks. From what I read, right? We are one of the areas that Arthur Grier took the funding and created homes and created a community. It wasn't a lot of folks that at that time who were doing that kind of work, creating community. And I think that's why a lot of times I ride in when I ride my bike, because that's the only transportation I have. So when I ride my bike, I ride through on Fanny Circle, and I wonder what it was like for some of those soldiers to be housed when they go to other places to try to get funding and try to get a home after the war. They weren't allowed to do that. But to run into a man like Arthur Grier and what they were doing gave families a great opportunity. So a lot of times I'm riding in there and I'm going back in history and wondering what it was like for some of those military folks that got out of, because I remember what it was like coming out of the military. Sometimes people take that for granted, the military service and what that really means. So when you're out, it's like you become just like a regular person, but really you're not a regular person. You're somebody who served your country, and I think a lot of those homes that I ride by, I wonder what some of those soldiers coming from home, that now they have an opportunity when otherwise they wouldn't have had an opportunity. And Arthur Grier, he made that possible.
The program that funded those houses, I think, was called FHA 603. I'm working on a history of affordable housing generally. And indeed, Arthur Grier, who was a funeral director, this is something that we've heard in other podcasts, how important funeral directors were in the black community. He was, in the late 40s, as far as we know, the only African-American landowner, developer who got FHA 603 money. And it was a step up for the people he was able to serve. It also is a reminder that opportunity was not equal, and somebody like Arthur Grier kind of pushed the envelope on something like that. So when you went in the military, let me tell you about somebody that we featured on another podcast, a guy named Wendell French. And Wendell French is buried in Cedar Grove Cemetery, and he joined the military. I think he was drafted. I don't think he had a choice. He ended up on crews that unloaded ships, and they stationed him over in England, in the United Kingdom. He was in Wales for a while, and he worked hard. But when he got to be off, he went and explored. And there are some wonderful stories about this black guy from Charlotte singing songs with the English people in the pub, teaching them a little bit of the boogie woogie, which was the big thing in the 40s. And so talk about you as a kid from Greertown joining the military. How did it change your life as you moved through the military?
I'm going to try to keep my composure here because as a kid growing up, I was, like a lot of like some friends who, I lived in both worlds. I lived in a quote unquote a white world, and also lived in the black world. I had friends that were outside my community that I brought in, and I went to their community. So growing up, my life was kind of different. I was quote unquote the water boy, for football and all the kind of stuff. I ran track. So I wasn't out there as a personality then, but then when I started to do ROTC, I think I started to see a direction in my life, right? Because at that time I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But then, the drills and all the stuff that we did in junior ROTC, and then when I went to high school, and then I was still in it, and the teachers who were there, they really gave us some good knowledge and instruction about becoming men and what that means in my life now. Because at that time there's probably little skirmishes, but it wasn't really a big war. So I went in the military during the peacetime. So I went in, like I said, I went in right after high school in July. Actually, it was July the 3rd. I went in the military, and I went to Texas for training. And because I was in ROTC, I got to leave 10 days in. So most of the guys, they had to stay the whole time, but I got a chance to leave early, which was a benefit for me being in junior ROTC and ROTC. So that was good. And then I came out with a stripe. I came out with 2 stripes. I'm sorry. I came out with 2 stripes and that benefited me from being in ROTC. But then I began to travel. I went to Korea. That was my first tour. Osan, Korea. I went over there. The probably first few nights I cried like a baby, because here I am, a young black man, and growing up in a black community, mixed black community, and and trying to find my direction in life and find out what I'm going to do with my life. I know I was going to be a carpenter, be a trained carpenter, but after that I wasn't sure what my life was going to be. So there's a lot of emotion that first couple of years of being in the military. But then I began to meet people, and I began to just to be around good people and bad people, people who shared and people who didn't share. And I think a lot of that came from going to East Mecklenburg, where I met a lot of different people from different walks of life. So definitely in the military, you meet a lot of different people from different walks of life. You got different histories, and you're all doing the same thing, and you're all working for a purpose. So a lot of that training that I got in the military helped me in my later life. As I had challenges in my life, I went back to the things that I learned in the military and some of the experience that I had, and I brought those forward to give me strength to get through my latter life. Because I think a lot of times when you're struggling in life, sometimes if you can go back to grab something that can give you strength. And for me, the military did that for me. That's why I always encourage folks. I think people got different reasons for going in the military. I went in because that was my only direction to go in. But I think for me, it was the best choice that I can make, because I'm still benefiting from that experience.
And I know that you went and absorbed the Korean culture. I know that you married a Korean woman. Talk, if you would, talk just a little bit about discovering that part of the world.
as with everything in military bases, you have a life outside the base, and I met this young lady in the store, and I got a chance to come and do my one tour when I went to Osan, Korea. Then I had a chance to go back to Korea a couple of years later, and I saw the same young lady in another city walking down the street. But before then, I was praying for God to give me a wife. I wanted somebody to live my life out with. And then, lo and behold, I go back to Korea, and that was just a short tour of duty. That was like 2 months. We did some training over there in another city, in Kunsan. So as I'm walking, and at nighttime, we're just walking going to bars or whatever, and I happened to see this young lady, and it was the same lady that I saw working in the store from the years before. And it was like, and at that time, I was like, I was looking for a wife, and I was like, wow. And I was like, okay, this got to be. So it ended up, when I went back to the base, ended up started paperwork before I left to come back to base to start marriage paperwork, because I thought it was God sent for me to meet her again. How many times can you meet somebody and then 2 years later, in the same country, you meet them in another place? So to me, it was like a sign. So it ended up being a 16-year marriage and 2 beautiful children in their 30s now. And unfortunately, I'm divorced now, but still, she's still here, lives with my son, and I eat the food, and just the experience of seeing different cultures, how different cultures treat their older people, that kind of thing. So I loved the Korean culture.
James, this is really fantastic, because when we think about the soldiers at Cedar Grove, and the premise of our whole show here, Lost Soldiers, is really to emphasize the experience that was offered to these men, or that they sought by joining the military, and looking at that as an opportunity to see something different, something new, an experience that they could grow from, hopefully something they could bring back to help and support their families. And you've touched on a lot of that. One of the questions I always like to ask is, because I'm fascinated by the fact that we always forget about the age of soldiers. These are kids, very young men. You haven't been anywhere, done much. You said you're at East Mecklenburg, and then you're in Korea. That's quite a jump. I'm always interested to know what it was like to see that different culture, how it impacted you. You talked about it a little bit, but if you could share just more about what it smelled like, what was the heat like, what were the reactions of the other soldiers, for instance, that found themselves in that situation?
If I take myself back in memory, I think the first thing was smell. The country had a smell to it. It was a different smell, right? I think that's the first thing that I noticed getting off the plane, because it was misty. I think it was November when I got there, so it was misty when I got there, and I smelt the culture of kind of like as I got to know the community. What I was smelling was food, was the land, was the people. You know what I'm saying? Because in their culture, they eat kimchi. Kimchi has a smell to it. When you eat it, it permeates the smell out. So it's good. I like kimchi, but it has a smell to it. But I mean, it's something that you get used to. A lot of guys that like you said, were young. When I got there, I was the youngest guy in the group that I was in. Right, the next guy, he was like 36. So here it is. I'm 18 years old, and most of the other guys that I'm working around were like 36 and above. The guy I bunked with, I think he was in his beginning 40s. So I was around a lot of black men who kind of like, they gave me the title, nickname Youngblood, and they kind of like took me under their wing. As I made mistakes, I remember the first night I got overly drunk. I found myself in the shower, and my roommate had taken care of me and made sure I got into bed. And so I woke up the next morning. He told me what he had done, and I think just the culture of the camaraderie of looking out for one another. And I guess those guys, I still think back to those times when those guys looked out for me. Whether it's on the job or downtown shopping or something. Those guys always looked out for me as a young pup, 18, 19, coming in the military, and they know I'm crying because I want to go home. But then I began to be a man, and I began to learn man things from other guys who were in that same place. So I had a lot of guys who, I think back to, who were in the same squadron I was in, my same age. I wonder how their lives ended up.
What was your squadron?
554, and it was a Red Horse squadron. And what we did was, a lot of people think that in the Air Force everybody fly a plane. No. What it is we support the pilots. So what I did as a carpenter, if we went to war, I would be dropped in the area, and with the bulldozer we would be clearing out of space to make a landing pad so aircraft can come and land, and we would have to build a tent city for the flyers and for us, so that we can eat, we can sleep. So that was my job, to go out and build a tent city for the pilots who were doing the thing that they had to do. And then after that, we had to do security. So that was my job. So I got a chance to overseas see things built from the ground up. And then when I was in the States, I got to do maintenance on things that were already built. So I learned not only to grow things, build things from ground up, from clearing the land and trees, to just taking care of the maintenance of already buildings and the houses that the soldiers and the officers that lived in. And a lot of the guys that I remember, they were in the same situation that I was, and I think we learned together. And I would love to know what happened to some of them guys.
Anyone in particular?
Rick. Don't remember his last name, Rick. He was I don't remember where he's from. I still see his face. We used to go used to get drunk together, just do crazy stuff together, because we're young and we don't know nothing. And he was a good guy. He was a good guy,
This is really insightful, James, to talk about your experience at the time it was, and really juxtapose it to a lot of what we've been able to learn in Lost Soldiers and about our soldiers that are interred there. So I'll give you a sort of quick anecdotal thing that we found out that I think is really fascinating. Is we've discovered that there is a soldier in Cedar Grove from the Spanish-American War. What we found out looking into that situation was that there was a group called the North Carolina Light Infantry that was an all-black unit. And this, again, is Spanish-American War. Tom is here because I am horribly bad with times. So whatever time period that did cover was very early in the military history of the country. The Charlotte Light Infantry turned into the North Carolina 3rd Regiment. It was an all-black regiment with all-black leadership. And this is at a time where the federal army, I believe, was just kind of formalizing. And a lot of that was based on volunteer militia interest. And so the light infantry in North Carolina, here in Charlotte specifically, it was the Charlotte Light Infantry, was a black unit that fought for inclusion in the Spanish-American War, and they got it. They were one of the first groups. So we have a soldier there who was a part of that. One of the big coups they had as well is that although there were black soldiers serving, there were very few, if any, that had black leadership. So that was a big coup to happen. And you touched on some really cool things about how these soldiers looked out for you, how they took care of you, made sure that, young blood was going to be okay, which is, which is really cool. And I thank those guys if you're listening, and thanks for looking out for young blood so he can be here with us. And so that he's taken all that experience and really making a big difference in the community. So all those soldiers that looked out for young blood, you did a great job. We extend our thanks here at Lost Soldiers for keeping our buddy James Lee going in these trying times. James, what I'm getting at here is integration. What was your unit like? Did you have an all-black unit? Was it mixed? tell us more about that if you can.
And let me just put in a little bit of context here. The military, like American life, was segregated from the time when it really grew in the Spanish-American War in the late 1890s, all the way up until right after World War II, when Harry Truman said, "This is wrong. We got to integrate our military." And so James Lee, serving in the 1980s, is in a part of the United States culture that is more integrated than most of United States culture, because in the 80s, people were still figuring out how to integrate schools and things like that. So James Lee, what was it like?
My units were always integrated. I mean, I worked around a lot of different folks. Because you had you had all the trades, so I didn't have anything that really bothered me as far as getting along. I had a couple supervisors that were kind of like quote unquote racist. You could tell. I mean, Indiana, I remember this one supervisor we had, this civilian, and he I don't know, just some of the things that you do. It's slight things that people do to one another that some folks don't understand, that it's something bad that you just did to me, right? You don't understand what that is, but other folks understand what that is. So there's working under a supervisor like that who would like send you different places and make you do different things, give you extra stuff, and you're like, wait, why aren't you doing this to other people? So I ran into a little bit of that in the military, but it wasn't that much. I had some great experiences in the military. I went in peacetime. So unlike some folks who in the Army, they do all the training, the Air Force we had to run a mile and a half every year, and it was just like mostly like a job. And I've taken that model of living into my senior years now, because that experience has taught me how to survive when I was on the street for a year or two. Those experiences in the military helped me to get by, because it was a regiment that I had even in the street. Folks have a regiment, but the military had me do a regiment of stuff. I mean, it helped me to keep hope in myself, right? So all those things that I did in the military that were like, A, B, and C and structured. On the street, I had a structured homelessness kind of life journey, and I think it helped me get out faster than possibly other people. Because I had structure already in my life prior to, but then when I became homeless in my 30s, 40s, into my 50s, I went back and grabbed some of that knowledge that I got from the military to help me get through, and and still have some kind of structure to my life instead of just being out and just not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do. But it really helped me to do that. A lot of the folks that I met a lot of great people, in the service, and my unit was mixed. Had a lot of young folks, had a lot of older folks, a lot of civilians that that we work with. They were just as nice and approachable as any instructor that you would want to train you to do carpentry work. I remember when I was stationed in Washington State, I was paired with a older gentleman. His name was Doc. Doc taught me the trade. He taught me a lot of things about how to do the work, how to be prepared to do work, and how to be on time, and how to be a good worker. So I learned a lot of different things from a lot of different people.
So James, I think that learning how this has helped you as a person and shaped your life, really looking again through the lives of these lost soldiers that we are working with at Cedar Grove, finding out how that military service was really something that was persistent throughout your life after you had that experience, which I think is wonderful. And that's why I want to look and why we're taking such a close look at the experiences of these folks, what they went through, what they learned, what they contributed and how they brought that service back into the communities to make big change, to support their families, to support that type of growth. My question is about these young folks today. Can you imagine a 16-year-old, or not 16 quite, but let's call it 17, 18-year-old, making the decision to head off into conflict? You mentioned that you were served in peacetime, which is equally valuable, I want to add, because, peacetime comes from preparation and comes from, successful conflict resolution, we'll call it, brings us to peacetime. So it's important, the service that every soldier provides at that time. So my question is really twofold for you here. One is, I would like for you to present yourself as your Air Force title. How would you say that? You know what I mean? Private, first class, this group, blah blah blah. I don't know the call when you announce where you were and who you're with, but I would love to hear that from you. And then I'd like to get your thoughts on any advice you would give our young folks out here today.
I made it to sergeant. Like I say, I started in with 2 stripes, and through training that I had over a couple of years, I got my sergeant stripes with 554 CES, which was Civil Engineers Squadron. And like I say, that they were in Korea. But then when I came to the States, of course, they had a different number because it was a different base. One of the bases that I went to, the aircraft was strictly tankers and cargo, right? So that base was different. That was the strategic base. But then I went to a tactical base in Washington State, and they had fighter aircraft. So depending on what the mission of the base is what the aircraft is going to be on the flight line. So I had a chance to go to one that was just like a support base with the tankers and the cargo and that kind of thing. Then I was at a base where that's where the fighters are. That's where the F-4s, F-18s, you know what I'm saying, the really bad aircraft that when they really going to have to do what they got to do. We have failed. My generation of, I'm at the end of the baby boomers. I think the baby boomers was 46 to 64. I'm at the end of the baby boomers because I was born in 61. And I think for me, from what I've seen, we've had such a good life, the baby boomers at the end of that period, like 58 to 64. We've had a great life. We've had a great life moving forward. But I think we've lost in what we were given in before with generations before us. We were given a pathway, and I think when our generation got so comfortable, we stopped giving those children that pathway. Kids don't have a pathway now. They got the thing in their hand, but they don't really have a pathway past their youth, thinking forward to their adulthood. The military gave me that ability to think forward. My thing with these young people, unfortunately, we have failed in letting different things integrate into making our families weaker when they're trying to raise children the right way with the right morals, that kind of thing. Don't steal from nobody, do the right thing, be a good person. You know what I'm saying? I think we failed in a lot of that, and some of these young kids, they strive for that, but we haven't given them that. So I think a lot of what they're going through, I wouldn't want to be a young person now. I wouldn't, because the challenges for them is too much. The decision making for them is too great. I had to make a decision between 3 TV stations when I was growing up. There's endless possibilities for these young people there's no real pathway for them, because there's so much that's out there that they can do until they find out what is that one thing that they need, and what is that one thing that is them, that's going to drive them for the rest of their life. And I think my generation have failed in helping those children to find that whatever that is that they wanted to do. We've just put kids out there and just hope that they might made the right decisions. The generations before me, they made me make sure that I was able to think about making the right decisions as I grow into a man. And I think a lot of times we have failed kids because we haven't given them that thing that we had. Looking back in the history of my family and the people that that put in me the work for me to be a man. We have failed our children moving forward because we haven't put those things in them. We have let other people put them things in them so that they can move forward. And I think some of the work that I do is just that, trying to get back to the old school things, that kids respect adults. You don't talk back to an adult that loves you, You know that there's a lot of things we can do, but I mean, one of the things that we do in the community, and I do in the community, just try to make that connection with some of those old values. It might be old-fashioned values, but I think they still matter.
Is the military a solution for these young kids?
The military isn't for everybody, but because you have to give yourself to the military, because you're theirs until you get out. That means they're going to take care of you. They're going to give you everything that you need. They're going to train you. I don't know that these children would be willing to pull back and say, okay, I'm going to take this person and yell it in my face, because they're yelling in my face for a reason. I don't think kids nowadays could take that. The technical what they call them TAs. I forgot the name for them, but the trainers. That's part of when you first in the military. That's your first step to see if you can handle somebody pushing you into a space where you don't want to be. I don't know if that we've trained these children to be able to adjust to that, to be in the military. I think the military is something most countries have their men go in at least spend 2 years. In Korea, you have to spend 2 years in the military. I think for some folks, you can't make that happen in America, but I think most people should spend some time in the military because it gives you a direction to go. Some of these kids, they don't have a direction. They're just all over the place. And I think we have failed this younger generation because we haven't done those things that we were given. I mean, that's just my perspective on what I see.
We're almost out of time here, and James Lee, you are a person of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'll put in a plug for a book that doesn't quite exist yet. It's probably called A History of Grier Heights, from rural community to urban neighborhood. The manuscript is written. James Lee and I have been working on this for a couple of years. And James is mostly an advocate for affordable housing, and he is very present in our community. And so a lot of people are looking forward to this book. We're hoping it'll be out at the end of 2025 if all goes well. And so thank you so much for being with us this day.
I agree wholeheartedly. James, thank you for your service. Thank you for the hard work and the service you continue to provide in the community. It is noted the changes are palpable, as they say, and we can see the direction that your work is providing in the community. So please keep that up. We hope that we'll get some young listeners here at Lost Soldiers so they can get some of the wisdom you've shared about your experience, what it's meant to you, and how it's positioned you to be a change maker here in Charlotte, which ultimately is just a wonderful thing, and we support that wholeheartedly. Look forward to the book coming out, and we thank you for your time here on Lost Soldiers. If you guys want to sign off, thank you again.
Thanks also to the Carolina Room of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library, the good folks here at the podcast studio and Imaginon, folks at Veterans Bridge Home, Wreaths Across America, Shay Malik Abdullah, who has envisioned this whole thing around Cedar Grove Cemetery, and particularly James B. Lee.
I want to thank you guys. It's always amazing to be around folks like you. I appreciate it. And for some folks, the military is a good direction to go into. And I appreciate my relationship with Tom. And as Tom says, they've been working on a book for 35 years or so. And I'm just appreciative to be in this space with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Lost Soldiers, a production of Wreaths Across America Radio, brought to you by SaveCedarGrove.org and HistorySouth.org.